on swiftly to the statement. Minister Michael Shanks.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and my apologies to the House that you have even more of me to put up with. Madam Deputy Speaker, with permission, I would like to make a statement about support for biomass electricity generation. In January 2024, the previous government launched a consultation on supporting large-scale biomass generators when existing support ends in 2027. That consultation outlined their proposals to continue to support biomass as a valuable form of dispatchable power. Since this government came to office, we have carefully considered responses to that consultation and assessed the case for a new support mechanism. Biomass currently plays an important role in our energy system, but we are conscious of concerns about sustainability and the level of subsidy that biomass plants have received in the past. With this in mind, I want to report to the House on our conclusions about the role of Drax Power Station in Yorkshire in the years 2027 to 2031. In coming to the view I expressed today, we have taken advice from the National Energy System Operator on questions of security of supply, analysed the effect on consumers of support for biomass versus the alternatives, looked at issues around subsidy and sustainability in the existing arrangements, and considered longer-term issues around decarbonisation. Firstly, on security of supply. We inherited a situation from the previous government where there was no long-term planning for our energy system and its resilience. In the system we have inherited, large-scale biomass provides around 5% of our annual electricity generation, serving a specific role as a source of firm power. To meet our needs between 2027 and 31, we could seek to replace Drax with new gas-fired power stations, but in the timescale we now have, there would be significant risks to relying on this approach. And in that context, NESO have advised us that Drax plays an important role in delivering security of supply between 2027 and 2031. Second, on price, we have undertaken comprehensive analysis of the costs of biomass against alternatives, and our central projections show that on the right terms and in a much more limited role than today, biomass generation at Drax is the lowest cost option, including when compared to gas-fired power stations for bill payers during this period. Third, we have looked at previous arrangements for subsidy and sustainability. This government's view is that they simply did not deliver a good enough deal for bill payers, and they enabled Drax to make unacceptably large profits. At the same time, they demanded levels of sustainability that are not now in line with the latest scientific evidence or global best practice, including supply chain emissions well above the European standard. And we have concluded that if Drax is to continue to play a role in our power system, these arrangements must urgently be improved going forward. Fourth, we've looked at issues around decarbonisation. Our finding is that there is a potential role for bioenergy with carbon capture and storage, or power BECCS, but realistically this will take time to implement and therefore cannot form the primary basis of this decision. On the basis of this assessment, and given the circumstances we have inherited, the clear evidence is that Drax is important to delivering a secure, value-for-money power system in the period 2027 to 31. But we have also concluded that we cannot allow Drax to operate in the way it has done before or with the level of subsidy that it received in the past. And on this basis, we have secured heads of terms that will form the basis of a very different arrangement with Drax for support during the period 2027 to 31. Let me set out, Madam Deputy Speaker, the terms of this agreement. First, it will ensure that Drax plays a much more limited role in the system, providing low-carbon dispatchable power only when it is really needed. Drax currently operates as a baseload plant, running around two-thirds of the time. That means it provides power even when other renewable sources are abundant. This must not continue. So under the new arrangement, Drax will be only supported to operate at a maximum load factor of just 27%. In other words, it will operate less than half as often as it currently does. This will be guaranteed by the design of the dispatchable contract for difference, which we have agreed. When renewable power is abundant, Drax will not generate, and consumers will benefit from cheaper wind and solar instead. Second, reflecting this, the contract will deliver much better value for consumers. It will significantly reduce the amount paid in subsidies compared to the previous support mechanism. This new deal halves the subsidies for Drax, the equivalent to a saving of nearly £6 per household per year. Furthermore, our analysis shows this will save consumers £170 million in subsidy each year of the agreement, compared with the alternative of procuring gas in the capacity market. I can also inform the House that the deal limits the expected rate of return for Drax to a level below that of monopolies regulated by Ofgem. But while this is our central estimate, unlike the last government, we are not prepared to take the risk of prices soaring in response to volatile fossil fuel markets. So this agreement includes a built-in windfall mechanism with rates of 30% and 60% that would claw back excess profits made by Drax, guaranteeing a much fairer deal for consumers than in the past. Thirdly, we will introduce tough new measures on sustainability. We will increase the proportion of woody biomass that must come from sustainable sources from 70% to 100%. We will significantly cut the allowable supply chain emissions to a level in line with much stricter regulations currently operating in the rest of Europe. And we will exclude material sourced from primary forests and old-growth forests from receiving support payments. There will be substantial penalties on Drax if these criteria are not met. And we will go further to ensure greater confidence that these standards will be met. So I can inform the House that we will also appoint an independent sustainability advisor to work with my department, the Low Carbon Contracts Company and Ofgem to ensure our monitoring and enforcement measures are robust and keep pace with science. I want to be clear to the House. Taken together, these measures represent a profound shift from the past on both sustainability and value for money. In this context, this is the right deal for security of supply and price in the period 27 to 31, given the circumstances we inherited from the previous government. But nevertheless, we recognise the strength of concerns in this House and across the country about the use of unabated biomass. It is not a long-term solution. We are determined that the next time these decisions are made, government is not left in the circumstances we have been. So we will do the work that was not done by the previous administration on strong and credible low-carbon alternatives, so that in 4 years' time we have proper options. To help that process, we are setting up an independent review to consider how options for greenhouse gas removal, including large-scale power BECCS and DACs, can assist the UK in meeting our net zero targets and ensure security of supply out to 2050. It will take representations widely on these issues and report back in due course. Madam Deputy Speaker, the steps I have set out today are about fulfilling our duty to ensure security of supply and the best deal for bill payers. We have come into office faced up to the circumstances left by the previous government and delivered a step change in value for money and sustainability. This government will do whatever it takes to deliver energy security, to protect bill payers now and into the future, and I commend this statement to the House.
Shadow Minister Andrew Bowie.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. I also must apologise. I'm sure the House is getting a little bit fed up with myself and the Minister this afternoon. And I thank the Minister for advance sight of this statement. Although I must say that in the past few weeks it has been difficult not to feel at least a little bit sorry for ministers in the Department for Energy Security and Net Zero. First, their Secretary of State was forced out of hiding to defend a third runway at Heathrow, something the Secretary of State said once that we couldn't do because it would make us look completely ridiculous. They've had Cornwall Insight state they're going to miss their clean power target by, and I quote, a country mile. And they're getting ready, as I think was clear during the last urgent question, to be overruled by the Prime Minister and approve the oil and gas fields at Rosebank and Jackdaw, something that we would be very welcoming of on this side of the House. And now, The Secretary of State has sent the honourable gentleman to the House this afternoon to defend the farce of chopping down trees in forests in Canada, converting them into pellets, shipping them across the Atlantic on diesel-chugging ships and burning them in a power station in North Yorkshire, all in the name of net zero. Now, the Conservative Party is under new management, and that means confronting hard truths. So let's get one thing straight from the outset. Drax's biomass plant is not clean, nor is it cheap. Let's be clear. As the Right Honourable Lady for Surrey East has said, burning wood from the other side of the Atlantic, releasing more CO2 in the process, and labelling it as renewable is a product of carbon budget system which forces politicians to make perverse decisions. Decisions, Madam Deputy Speaker, which result in an extortionate level of subsidy, deliver a bad deal for British taxpayers and bill payers, and make the climate worse. We've started a reset on net zero, and we will not shy away from arguing for a more pragmatic approach, which prioritises cheap, stable and reliable energy. Turning to the details of the statement today, we naturally welcome a more limited role for Drax biomass in our power system, but we should be clear that more biomass subsidies are only needed in the short term, because this government is embarking on a reckless experiment to have a grid based entirely on intermittent renewables at the expense of flexible and reliable baseload power. Drax's role could be filled with more gas power plants, which are cheaper and cleaner than burning trees shipped in from Canada. Ministers know that burning wood at Drax produces 4 times the emissions of our last coal power plant, which in turn produces around twice the carbon emissions of gas. That's gas that we could get from the non-subsidised fields in the North Sea if this government weren't in such an ideological rush to shut down our domestic energy industry. So on the question of cost, the new agreement that the Minister has signed us up to comes with a strike price that is genuinely eye-watering, at £160 per megawatt hour in today's money. That's actually higher than Drax's existing agreement of £138 per megawatt hour. And in fact, the Baringa analysis that Drax has put out this morning shows that bill payers will still be paying over £450 million a year in subsidies to burn trees. Now, if the analysis behind the Minister's promise to cut bills by £300 is anything to go by, we should know not to rely on them by too much. So can I ask, has his department carried out any of its own independent analysis, separate to that which was published by Drax this morning, to determine at what the increased strike price will cost the British people and how that compares to supporting extra gas power in the capacity market? We welcome the strength of sustainability criteria, as investigations by Ofgem and the BBC Panorama have shown that there are serious questions to be answered by Drax around the import of wood from untouched primary forests in British Columbia. But as the BBC journalist Joe Crowley, who reported on these issues for Panorama, stated this morning, more clarity is needed on whether wood from primary forests will be classed as unsustainable under this new regime. So can the Minister confirm that Drax will not be allowed to burn wood from primary forests during any of its generation, not just that which is subsidised? And what work is being done to make sure that the new sustainability criteria is actually enforceable? And on the subject of sustainability reporting, can the Minister also confirm the Department has received the KPMG report that the Prime Minister said he would look at, and confirm whether they will be placing a copy in the library of the House? I note that the Minister's statement has left the door wide open for the introduction of power BECCS after these transition arrangements end in 2031. That proposal, to fit first-of-a-kind technology solely for the purpose of meeting our carbon budgets, would cost the bill payer up to £40 billion, or £1.7 billion a year. That, we believe, is unacceptable. So can the Minister confirm to the House whether his department has produced any analysis of what a system without BECCS would cost, and will they rule out keeping this racket going indefinitely and seeing people's energy bills rise as a result to pay for BECCS? And will the government set a date for the last tree to be burnt in a British biomass power station? Madam Deputy Speaker, this government has been promising us clean, cheap, homegrown energy, but burning trees at Drax is not clean, it's not cheap, and the trees are certainly not homegrown. And if the widespread burning of forests is part of the solution to climate change, then we have to ask ourselves if that's the problem we are trying to solve.
Yeah. Minister.
Well, thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I mean, under new management, indeed, I think the tough thing about being the acting Shadow Secretary of State is, of course, it's not his script that he's reading out. And we are on this side fixing the mistakes that the previous government left. And I would just gently point out that 8 previous Conservative energy ministers stood on this side of the dispatch box and deal after deal after deal announced a worse deal than this for bill payers, for energy security, for sustainability, and he seems to forget that today. In fact, I mean, only a year ago, such is my love of the honourable gentleman's contributions in this House, I was reading up on Hanson. Only a year ago, he was saying that he had absolute confidence in the deal that the previous government made with Drax. And so, on his questions, let me just outline why this deal is so different from his party's deals in the past. First, he asked about the question of subsidy. He mentions the figure of what this will cost to deliver the dispatchable power he needs. He missed the fact that, of course, this is half what was paid under the previous government, nearly £1 billion a year paid by the previous government to Drax. We've halved that to lower subsidies to lower bills for consumers. Secondly, he spoke about the sustainability questions, and we agree on the importance of tightening up the sustainability. That's why we've moved from the 70% to the 100%. Of course, I would gently say again, he was quite happy to support, when he was in the Energy Department, public money going into that unsustainable biomass year after year after year. We are saying if there is unsustainable biomass in the mix, we will not pay a penny of subsidy to Drax. And thirdly, of course, what the previous government didn't do was any sort of deal to control the runaway profits that Drax, the excess profits, the record profits that Drax were able to obtain as part of the deal that they had with them. We have put in place a mechanism to claw back that excess profit so that the people of this country don't pay over the odds for their energy. And fourthly, and let me just make this point about energy security, which I think is so important. The party opposite exposed us year after year after year to a lack of a plan for what the energy system would look like in the late 2020s and into the 2030s. We've had to take tough decisions quickly to secure that supply for the future, and that's what we've decided to do. And even running Drax when it wasn't necessary, when there were clean, cheaper alternatives in the system, we have decided that that will not happen. And that's why, to his specific point around Drax running less, limited generation times mean that it will only run when we need it for capacity, for demand in the system. And the alternative, which he asked for the figure, which I said in the statement, would be £170 million more every single year. On the final point around the future of BECCS, we are open-minded at this point about what role BECCS will play, but I do agree with them that it is important we come to a decision point on it soon. The review that we've outlined is about taking all the various bits of science that we know are already there in different reports, but trying to work out a credible pathway for whether power BECCS will really play a role in the system or not, and we'll make that decision as soon as possible. But I would just finish, Madam Deputy Speaker, by saying that this is an extremely different deal, one that it delivers a benefit for the hard-working people of this country, that ensures sustainability is at the heart of it, and that protects our energy security in the years ahead.
Chair of the Select Committee, Bill Esterson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I congratulate my honourable friend on his marathon stint, on the pragmatic and well-crafted analysis he set out of how the government's energy policies are addressing the security of supply and providing the best deal for bill payers. And can I just say this is in stark contrast to the party opposite and in what he described in particular as the terrible deal that they presided over on Drax while they were in office. The statement today is a timely reminder of the challenges around Drax, not least given the news over the weekend, just over the weekend, of further misreporting of the burning of primary forest. The National Energy Systems Operator, in its future energy pathway, predicted a reduction in the use of biomass as part of the UK becoming more energy independent. So can I ask the Minister if, in his announcement, he foresees the cuts in subsidies and the reliance on Drax will contribute towards the government's clean power plan, towards energy security and towards reducing bills for all of our constituents?
Minister.
Well, the chair of the Select Committee, of course, is absolutely right around where DRAX and where biomass generally fits within the wider energy system that we have. And of course, what we want to build at pace is the clean power system that takes us off the volatile fossil fuel markets. That is important, but of course there are short-term issues around ensuring that we have the dispatchable power that we need when we need it. There are long-term decisions that this government's taken. For example, the first funding scheme for long-duration energy storage in 40 years that we hope will see modern new technologies of long-duration energy storage, but also some classics from the history books of pumped hydro storage playing a really critical role on the system, delivering the dispatchable clean power we need. But there is a short-term question that we had to answer that the previous government didn't have an answer for, that how we get to 2031. We either build new gas units. Our analysis was that this was, and the advice from NISO was that this was more likely to deliver the energy security, but also in the end be cheaper to bill payers who ultimately have to pay the bill for this. So this, of course, our long-term ambition is to build towards that clean power system. This is an important step to get us the energy security that we need in the system.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Pippa Heylings.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'd like to begin by thanking the Minister for sharing his statement with us in advance. Climate change and nature loss are undoubtedly the greatest twin threats we face. Whilst pursuing the clean power by 2030 goal, the government does need to reconsider its decision to indeterminately extend the burning of biomass as part of the energy mix, despite overwhelming evidence that it's not sustainable nor truly renewable, especially with the threats to virgin forests. The Minister does say that biomass is vital for energy security, supplying 5% of the UK's electricity. However, he does not, or fails to, mention that biomass also emits 18% more carbon dioxide than coal and takes nearly a century for new trees to absorb these emissions. So this isn't energy security, it's a carbon-ticking time bomb. We're told by the Minister that NISO advised the necessity of DRAX between 2027 and 2031 to prevent supply risks. That is due to the reckless rowing back by the former government and the absence of accelerated investments in renewables and for the continued investment in DRAX as part of their strategy. But what kind of future are we building if it depends on burning forests rather than investing in real renewable energy sources? On cost, the Minister tells us that biomass at DRAX is cheaper than gas-fired power. But we must not forget that past subsidies by the former government allowed DRAX to profit excessively at the expenses of bill payers. Even now, today, despite halved subsidies, DRAX's shares have surged, suggesting that even this deal remains a good deal for them and potentially a bad one for taxpayers. We therefore call on the government to release the 2022 KPMG report into DRAX's subsidy claims, should have been released during the Conservative government's time. Transparency is crucial, and the public deserves to know if their money has been misused. Madam Deputy Speaker, I would just turn and end by asking whether we are looking for homegrown clean energy.
Minister.
Well, can I thank the Honourable Lady for her questions, and her tone means that I'll resist the urge to say that although I made fun of the Shadow Minister for 8 times, it was of course the current Lib Dem leader who agreed the first support deal for DRAX. But we'll move past that onto what I think were important questions about security of supply. And of course the place we want to get to by the end of this period is where we're not forced into making a decision like this again, and I think that's really important to say. We have got a strong deal that protects bill payers, that improves sustainability and that delivers energy security, but we want to have options. And the truth is, as she rightly points out, we came into government without those options because of the decisions made by the party opposite. So that's a really important point. On the excess profits point, I think it is important to say there was no mechanism in place before to claw back those excess profits. We've made that a key part of this negotiation, and we've managed to get it into this deal, because it is important that even if our estimates are wrong, and the estimates of course mean that they will have a profit below that the level expected of the regulated companies by Ofgem, but even if that's wrong, we claw back that additional profit from Drax. That's important for the system. On the question which the Shadow Minister also raised about KPMG's reports, I know that my department has seen them and has engaged with them. I know that Ofgem are still engaged in that audit process. I will take the questions away and see what can be done about sharing those reports.
Toby Perkins.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. We've got the new line from the official opposition. They are, we're told, a firm under new management, but it sounds to me rather like the same circus, just with different clowns. It isn't the reality of what we have heard that the Minister is absolutely right to say that the new deal that this government is putting in place is a far better deal for taxpayers. It's important that Drax was stood up to. The previous deal was an absolute disgrace for taxpayers. But can my honourable friend tell us a little more about the projections that he's seen, that the deal that he has agreed and announces today is the best role for taxpayers, even in comparison to gas, because we heard a different suggestion from the Shadow Minister opposite. Can he tell us a little more about how he can be certain that this is the best deal possible for taxpayers in this?
Well, my honourable friend makes a really important point, and I think on 2 points it is important to look at the analysis of the importance of Drax on the system. So first of all, the counterfactual of whether we built new gas-fired power stations. Our analysis is that the deal that we've agreed, which is the use of gas on the system at 27% of the time, is £170 million less than that. But the second part of that analysis that is really important around energy security is that the assessment is that even if we wanted to go down that route, there would be risks about whether we could actually build that capacity in the time that we have. And this is all about the decisions taken by the previous government not looking far enough ahead and not having that capacity on the system, so that even if we did want to proceed with new gas, actually there would be questions about whether we could build it in time. So this deal is around absolutely protecting bill payers, having the subsidy from £1 billion, making sure there is dispatchable power when we need it as we build the clean power system. And as we go towards the 2030s, our long-term planning is what comes next in terms of our clean power mix, but also in terms of the long-duration and short-duration storage mixes that will help us make different decisions from the one we were forced to make this time.
Sir Roger Gale.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I suppose we should be told that half a loaf is better than none, but this does seem to me to be a half-baked loaf, to say the least. Madam Deputy Speaker, the Minister has spent an hour this afternoon lecturing this House about why it was better to import oil and gas from overseas rather than to extend the production of at least some homegrown material. But the bottom line on this is, quite clearly, the Minister hasn't read the KPMG report, the Prime Minister hasn't read the KPMG report, and we are still going to pay billions of pounds in subsidy to import pellets created in Canada and then shipped at God knows what carbon cost across the Atlantic. Where, please, is the sense in that?
Well, first of all, Madam Deputy Speaker, I've spent the last hour answering questions from honourable members across the House. I haven't lectured anyone. I have, however, stated the facts, which is that if oil and gas is extracted from the North Sea, it is sold on the open market for whatever price the international markets have at that given moment. That's the point I was making. It delivers neither energy security nor confidence to bill payers. And while members in the party opposite may want us to go back to the fossil fuel casino and hope that we can play a better hand this time round, I think the reality is we should be building a secure power system that delivers energy security but also confidence that we won't be exposed to quite the same price spikes we have been in the past. So if he takes that as a lecture, he can take it as such. But what I would say on the point about the role that Drax will play, of course we looked at all of the assessments around Drax to date. The reason we've put in such a robust process around sustainability and around independent assessments of some of that is frankly because of the questions that he raises, because we know that there have been questions in the past. We want to make sure there are tough penalties if Drax don't comply, but also raising the sustainability from the level that the previous government had at 70% to 100% means we will not pay a penny of subsidy if Drax fails on the sustainability tests that we have set out for them. And that protects consumers right across this country and delivers the dispatchable power that we need.
Alex Sobel.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to thank the Minister for his statement. I've met women from the southern United States who live next door to forests which have been cut down, primary forests, which have been cut down by Drax for wood pellets to be burnt in Yorkshire, and from British Columbia. And as we know from BBC Panorama and Ofgem, primary and old cut forests have been utilised by Drax. Drax cannot be trusted to ensure that the sustainability requirements the Minister's put forward will be met. What powers and audit trail will the new independent sustainability advisor utilise to ensure that Drax is burning 100% sustainable wood and not primary forests, ruining people's lives in North America?
Well, my honourable friend makes an incredibly important point, and he's right, of course, that the sustainability criteria are important, but actually making sure they are met is important as well. So we will work with, this is a contract for difference agreement, we'll be working with Ofgem to work out exactly what their role is in this as the regulator, but also what we've announced to go above what has been in place before is an independent advisor that will work with my department, with the low carbon contracts company, with Ofgem to make sure the latest science, the latest awareness on biomass and on different elements of it are key in our decision making, and to make sure there is that real audit trail in place. But ultimately, I think the other thing that is really important about this is that there is now no room whatsoever for Drax to comply with the sustainability criteria. It must be 100%, or there will not be a penny of subsidy for any that is not sustainable. That is important, and the audit trail will be part of that work as well.
Bradley Thomas.
Deputy Speaker, will the Minister agree to publish the full comprehensive analysis of the cost of providing support to Drax versus the alternatives?
Minister.
Well, I'm very happy. I think transparency on this is important, so I'm very happy to publish what we can. There will be elements of that analysis that is obviously commercially sensitive in terms of details about how Drax runs its power station, so I will have to take away exactly what can be published. I know that the NISO today, for example, has published a summary of their advice to give clarity on what their view was around the security of supply questions. I'm happy to take the point away and I'll write to him.
Barry Gardiner.
Drax has exploited UK taxpayers for far too long. It has lied about meeting sustainability rules, has burnt 1 million tonnes of wood from primary forest, gagged whistleblowers with non-disclosure agreements, and pretended it could sequester carbon from replanted forests in time to meet our 2050 targets. Today, the government has brought that to a stop. It has debunked Drax's lies, cut its subsidy, and set a clear and sensible exit strategy that will maintain security of supply. After 15 years of campaigning, I welcome this as a breakthrough for honesty and common sense. And will the Minister now look at the role of Ofgem in all of this? Just this weekend, when it was informed of the other break in proper reporting of sustainability, it replied that that is the same issue as we've dealt with before. What would he say if a policeman said that about a serial murderer?
With the start of my honourable friend's question, can I first of all just say that I agree that this government was deeply concerned about sustainability practices at Drax and about the level of subsidy, frankly, that was part of the deal negotiated by the previous government. We inherited a dire situation in terms of the long-term planning for our energy security. And so what we have sought to do with this deal is answer all of those questions on sustainability, on security of supply, on excess profits, and on the role of Drax on the system for dispatchable power, which is important. In terms of the questions about the role of Ofgem and all this, I know that the audit into some of Drax's practices is still underway. I'm not privy to the details of that rightly because it's Drax, it's Ofgem's review, but we have a wider review of the role and remit of Ofgem underway at the moment, and I think that would be an opportunity for the Honourable Gentleman to feed in his thoughts on the future of Ofgem.
Chris Law.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Biomass burning has always been a sticking plaster that's allowed successive governments to claim green progress while continuing to emit immense amounts of CO2. The public were promised £28 billion a year of green investment, but instead we're getting less than 6% of what's needed. So when will the UK Government commit to significant direct investment in long-term energy storage, such as hydropump storage and green hydrogen production, so the UK can move past burning forests for our energy?
Minister.
Well, I agree with the Honourable Gentleman on his point, and I reiterate the point that we wish we were not in the position we were in when we came to government, where, for a security of supply point of view, this was the only option that would deliver the security out to the early 2030s. What we've sought to do is get the best possible deal for sustainability and for bill payers, but I agree with them, we need to be building what comes next. Last year we announced that for the first time in 40 years the government would be funding long duration energy storage. I've held a number of meetings with developers on pumped hydro, but also on new modern forms of long duration energy storage. There's some really interesting innovative ideas out there. Ofgem is currently putting in place the technical specifications of what that cap and floor scheme will look like, but we want to get that rolling as soon as possible, and from all my meetings with developers in Scotland there is huge potential around pumped hydro in particular that they are waiting for certainty from government to move forward with, and we're determined to give them that.
Olivia Blair.
Deputy Speaker, reports show that Drax has behaved appallingly and seemingly under the last government had pretty free rein. I welcome the fact that this settlement has a drastic reduction in subsidies, an upping of sustainability to 100% in supply chains, and a windfall tax principle that will deliver value for the British bill payer. And I welcome the further consultations the Minister has outlined, but it raises the question, why was the last government unable to get anywhere near to this deal?
Minister.
Well, I'm tempted to say, Madam Deputy Speaker, we'll have to ask the party opposite that question, but of course they're under new management, so they don't know why the previous government, that they were all ministers and made the decisions they did. The truth is that for far too long, under I think 8 different Conservative energy ministers, they signed off deal after deal after deal to Drax with uncapped profits, with nowhere near the sustainability criteria that they should have had, letting Drax do really whatever they wanted with this power station, and we have put that to a stop. And let's be really clear, on the subsidy, we have halved that subsidy, putting £6 off every single bill in this country every single year. We have increased sustainability to 100%, and we're delivering the energy security this country needs. But we should not have been in the position we were in on coming to office, where there were nowhere near enough long-term plans for what the future of our energy system looks like.
Martin Vickers.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I think I detected one item of agreement between the Minister and his shadow, and that was that there needs to be a long-term solution, and this is not a short-term fix. Surprisingly, there seems little support from the government benches for Drax, which plays a major part in the regional economy. In my own Brigg and Immingham constituency, Associated British Ports invested £150 million on the facility to import the biomass, and a significant number of my constituents will be involved in the supply chain. Can the Minister give an assurance that he will bear in mind the impact on the local economy as we move forward to a longer-term solution?
Minister.
Well, the Honourable Gentleman makes a very important point. I would just gently point out the Shadow Minister and I agree on a lot more than he likes to pretend, but or I like to pretend, perhaps. But he makes a very important point, and of course he's right that we are really aware of the importance of the jobs that will be at this particular power station and in the supply chain as well. We'll be working with Drax on what that looks like. We are, of course, changing the role that Drax will use the power station in Selby for, and I will make sure that I'm having those conversations about the supply chain, and I'm happy to speak to him more about that in due course.
Luke Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and can I thank the Minister for his statement. And I think he should be commended for ending the terrible deal negotiated by the party opposite, which led to higher bills, excess profits and poor sustainability standards. But I think it is worth saying again that there does seem to be no end to the party opposite's rank hypocrisy on energy policy. In government, the then Secretary of State for Energy, the member for East Surrey, signed off the planning consent, I've got it here, for the Drax carbon capture project, saying, and I quote, "the public benefits outweigh the harm." Now the Shadow Minister comes to the dispatch box to decry the costs, while the Right Honourable Member for East Surrey also opposes Drax. Can I ask the Minister whether he has considered capturing the burning hypocrisy of the benches opposite? Because it seems to be a truly inexhaustible resource.
Minister.
Well, I think my honourable friend makes the point for me. He forgets, of course, they're under new management, so it's all fine. We just forget everything that the last 14 years included and move on. Well, of course, we've had to pick up the pieces from the last 14 years, and while they won't take responsibility for those decisions, we have grasped these challenges and are moving forward with them as quickly as possible. And the truth is, we inherited not just an energy system that didn't have the long-term planning in it that it should have, but on Drax in particular did not have a deal that was good for the climate, good for energy security, or good for the hard-working people of this country that paid year after year after year for the subsidies that the previous government negotiated. We've brought down that, halving the subsidy every year, putting money back into people's pockets, and of course making sure that if there are excess profits, those profits come back to the Exchequer.
Lee Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. This net zero madness coming from this place is truly staggering. Right. Bear in mind, this power station used to burn coal from a coal mine from less than 20 miles away. Yeah. We're now transporting wood from 3,000 miles away. We're paying over £10 billion in subsidies for this power station, and it's producing 4 times more CO2 than a coal-fired power station. So could the Minister explain to me how this is contributing towards net zero?
Minister.
Well, I wasn't aware that it was the policy of the Reform Party to reopen the coal mines, but that's good to know. Great to know. Well, I'm very proud that as a country we have moved past coal-fired power station, which is coal power generation, which is incredibly disruptive for our environment. We closed the last coal power station last year at Ratcliffe-on-Soar, and the workforce there played a really proud role in recognising the role that they played in powering the country for many, many years, but also recognising that the drive to net zero is important. While we're building the clean power system that delivers energy security for the future, they're taking us back to the Stone Age.
Joanna Baxter.
Deputy Speaker. Can I thank the Minister for his statement and the strict new sustainability rules imposed on Drax, which will mean that we won't pay a penny for unsustainably sourced biomass. Can he give the House a bit more detail on the role of the independent adviser, though, because the work that they will be doing to hold Drax to account will be critical to ensuring that this deal progresses?
Minister.
Well, I thank my honourable friend for the question. The point of having an independent adviser is that while the role of the Low Carbon Contracts Company, which will be the counterparty, of course, to the Contract for Difference that we've agreed, and the role of Ofgem as a regulator is incredibly important, we think there is also a role for someone independent to make sure that they are analysing the situation with the particular questions about biomass and sustainability, but also having an eye on the science as it moves forward, because part of the challenge is that over years the sustainability information that we have, the types of forestry and where it comes from has changed. This adviser will play a really important role in that and will advise my department, Ofgem, and the Low Carbon Contracts Company in the years ahead of this deal. But I think it is important to say to my honourable friend that we want to make sure we've also got an independent review of what the future of this looks like, so that in 5 years' time we're not looking at the same decision as we are now.
Sir Julian Lewis.
I welcome the emphasis that the Minister keeps putting on energy security. So can he give us some idea of the timetable for when we will see the first of these small modular nuclear reactors commissioned, preferably ones built by Rolls-Royce, who have expertise in the area thanks to their excellent work for the Royal Navy?
Minister.
Well, I thank the Right Honourable Gentleman for his question. He's not going to draw me into a competition on the small modular reactors that is still going at the moment, but he has made his case for his preferred company at the moment. What I will say is that last week the Prime Minister announced that we have a new commitment to reviewing the 2011 planning statement so that we can have much more new nuclear across the UK. Particularly important because previously there were only 8 designated sites that were possible. The small modular reactors, of course, open up possibilities right across the country, and we want to see much more of that. We're moving as fast as possible to make sure these are underway. And I also hope that we can move in such a speed that the Scottish Government will change its objection to having small modular reactors in Scotland.
Joe Morris.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The news of a windfall tax on Drax will be welcomed by people across my constituency. Can the Minister assure me that this will be the end of the grotesque profits going to Drax at the expense of the taxpayer?
Minister.
Well, I can give my honourable friend that assurance. Partly we have, of course, significantly reduced the ability of Drax to make profits from this, but we've also been sure that if there are excess profits, that those are clawed back on behalf of the British people. And so there are additional rates in the mechanism that we have designed of 30% and 60% to make sure that any unexpected profits are clawed back as well. And of course, this wasn't the case under the deal of the 8 previous energy ministers in the previous government who signed off deals on Drax year after year after year. This is a new way of operating that protects our energy security, but also protects the hard-working people of this country.
Carla Denyer.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Drax is a clean energy scam that has been handed £6 billion by successive Conservative ministers since 2012, when that money should have been spent on getting energy bills down. Now, the Minister rightly cites past excess profits. Specifically, I believe he said that the new contract will allow government to claw them back. Can he clarify for me, will the contract allow clawback of previous excess profits and remedy the past misspending of public money, or does he just mean going forward into the future, in which case that is still throwing good money after bad, just slightly less of it?
Minister.
Can I thank the Honourable Lady for her question? We don't have a mechanism to claw back past profits from any company. That's not something that governments are able to do. What we can do is move forward with a fair system that, first of all, reduces the subsidy considerably, but also has these excess profit mechanisms in place, a windfall tax in place, to make sure that if they do generate additional profits, that we can claw that back for the British public. That's important. But I would just say that the level of subsidy that we have agreed in this deal brings it down to a considerably lower level, half what it was under the previous government.
Tom Collins.
Deputy Speaker, I welcome this revision of Drax's role in our energy system, reducing biomass and ensuring that where it is used, it displaces gas, not excess wind and solar. But we also need to find new low-carbon forms of dispatchable power backed up by long-term energy storage at scale. Hydrogen is a strong candidate for this, and by moving fast, the UK can reduce costs and regain our early mover advantage. So will the Minister work with industry at pace to ensure that the opportunities around hydrogen are known, explored and exploited?
Minister.
Well, I thank my honourable friend for the question. He's right that one of the really important outcomes from this new deal is that instead of cheaper wind and solar power being displaced by Drax when it operated with baseload capacity, Drax will only operate when we need it on the system, which means that those cheaper, cleaner power sources that we're building in abundance and that we want to see much more of in the years ahead can generate and can deliver cheaper power for the people of this country. On the wider point, I do think it's important that we explore the role that hydrogen can play on the system. There are a number of different technologies being looked at the moment. I met with some investors looking at the future of the gas system just last week to take forward some of these questions, and I'm happy to discuss this further with them in the future.
Dr Andrew Morrison.
The Minister said that he's looking for strong and credible low-carbon alternatives to burning biomass in order to generate electricity. Would he ensure that those alternatives do not include so-called energy from waste plants, since burning waste is as dirty as coal? And will he follow Scotland and Wales in placing a moratorium on the construction of new waste incinerators?
Minister.
Well, can I thank the honourable gentleman for the question? I think He's right to say what we want to build at the end of this are credible low-carbon alternatives. I'll look at the specific cases, but they're not what we see as being key to the review that we want to undertake. We want to look at carbon capture and other technologies, for example, but also, I think, really crucially, looking at how we store some of the renewable energy that we're generating in abundance, that particularly we can't use at times of peak demand, such as long-duration energy storage, and increasingly short-duration energy storage batteries that are powering much, much more than have been in the past. But I'll look at the specific points that he raises.
Alistair Strathern.
Madam Deputy Speaker, the last government's deal with that Drax was not just shocking value for the taxpayers, leaving us all on the hook for subsidising sky-high profits during the cost of living crisis, but bad news for the environment too, with real concerns about the sustainability of their supply chain. As this government rightly takes a measured approach to ensuring we protect not just bill payers but workers too, as we seize the benefits of the green transition, what assurances can the Minister give my constituents that this will be a far better deal for our country?
Minister.
Well, I thank my honourable friend for the question. He's right that this is about a good deal now in the short term for making sure that we have security of supply out to the early 2030s. It was key from the NISO's advice that we made this decision on the basis of security of supply, but we have also sought to, in the process, half the subsidy that Drax was given by the previous government and deliver on the sustainability criteria, taking it from 70% to 100%. So this is a good deal for the people of this country. But I think he also touches on the importance of the work that we need to do in the broader energy space to deliver energy security. That's why Clean Power by 2030, our sprint to deliver decarbonised power, is so important, delivering good jobs in the supply chains right across this country.
Sammy Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. This statement today should be a warning to all of those across the House who are the cheerleaders for renewable energy. Because let's not forget, in 2010, Drax Power Station was the poster boy for the green energy policy. And of course it turned out that instead of being green energy, it produces more CO2, would chop down the natural habitat 3,000 miles away, bring it and burn it in a power station in England, and consumers pay the grand total of £1,000 million a year for the pleasure of doing so. And this government has not learnt from the lesson, because only this year we have had a similar mistake being made, where with wind energy, where the government has given a subsidy 6 times what the price of gas would be. When are we going to find in 15 years' time a minister standing again apologising for a waste of public money, high electricity prices and environmental disaster?
Yeah. Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, after an urgent question and a statement, I hope I'm not still standing here in 15 years' time, and I suspect the House will support that. Look, let me just be really clear. I have to say I don't remember it being the poster child for the clean energy transition, but I have outlined very clearly why I think this is a decision that is important in terms of energy security, but we wish as a government that we had come in with more options. Unfortunately, those options weren't there, and therefore we have made the best out of what is a difficult situation to get an incredibly good deal that delivers value for money, improves sustainability and delivers on energy security. But I want to see in the 2030s our clean power system delivering cheaper bills, in industrial manufacturing jobs right across the country, and I hope that in 15 years' time he and I will have a conversation about how that is delivering for both of our constituents.
Tom Hayes.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Shadow Minister talks about being under new management. I slightly suspect he'll be saying the same thing in a few months' time after that inevitable bloody coup. But I wanted to commend this statement because it will do some really important things. Capping Drax's output, a windfall tax on Drax, millions saved by halving subsidies paid for by my constituents, and the forcing up of sustainability. It is a pragmatic solution to a disastrous inheritance. Does the Minister agree with me that this will be a better deal for taxpayers and consumers, for our energy security and our environment?
Minister.
Well, my honourable friend summarises the importance of this deal very clearly. We've limited the expected rate of return for Drax to a level below that of monopolies regulated by Ofgem. We've halved the subsidies that are provided to Drax that were in every single deal from the party opposite year after year after year, saving £170 million each year of this agreement. We've introduced a windfall tax of 30% and 60% clawed back should Drax's profits exceed that level. We're delivering on energy security and on tougher sustainability requirements. But at the heart of this deal is better value for money for the hard-working people of this country.
And the final question, Paul Waugh.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Drax has been a greenwashing con that ripped off the British public for far too long. And so can I welcome this statement? The Minister and the Energy Secretary have indeed done more than 8 previous Tory energy ministers and indeed 1 Lib Dem Secretary of State. So can I welcome the move to slash the subsidy for Drax and enforce 100% sustainability targets on the supply chains? But can I gently urge him, he talks about a windfall mechanism, to call a spade a spade. This is a windfall tax on Drax and we should be proud of saying so.
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend for that question at the risk of at the risk of me getting into trouble by those who are responsible for tax matters. I will simply say this is a windfall mechanism which does exactly the same thing, and it does exactly what the party opposite failed to do in 14 years, which is to make sure there is a good deal, good value for money for the British public, delivering our energy security, and crucially getting us to a point where our Clean Power Plan for 2030 delivers energy security, climate leadership, jobs right across this country. It's the ambition of doing something different in this country and doing it fast, and we're committed to delivering it.
That concludes the statement.